Finally, just as the sun began to set, the phone rang. Sarah's pulse quickened as she picked it up, answering cautiously. "Hello," she said, her voice trembling. The voice on the other end was frantic. "Oh my goodness, my name is John and I've been looking everywhere for that phone. I left it in the cab, and I've been trying to track it down. Can you please return it to me?" Sarah's heart softened as she heard the relief in the voice of the owner. She felt a deep sense of peace wash over her as she promised to return the phone. The temptation to keep it faded entirely, and she knew in her heart that she had made the right choice. The following day, she arranged to meet the phone's owner. When she handed over the phone, the young man expressed his gratitude, and, noticing Sarah's tired face, asked if there was anything she could do to help. Sarah hesitated for a moment, but the man was kind and persistent. After listening to Sarah's story, the man offered her the money for her exam, ensuring she could sit for her exams and continue her education. Sarah couldn't believe it. It was the miracle she had prayed for. The man's kindness restored Sarah's faith in people, and she realized that doing the right thing, even when it seemed difficult, had led her to the opportunity she needed. As she walked away, phone now returned and her future secured, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Her mother's wisdom had guided her once again. Sarah's life, once filled with hardship and uncertainty, had transformed in ways she could never have imagined. After she returned the lost phone to its owner, everything seemed to fall into place. John became her closest friend. He started supporting her in ways that went beyond just financial help. He paid for her exam fees, encouraged her through her studies, and made sure she never lacked anything during her university days. Throughout it all, Sarah remained focused on her education and her goals, but John's constant presence made her realize just how much he had moved from just a helper to a friend, and Sarah started to see him in a new light. The bond between them grew stronger, and Sarah began to trust him in ways she had never trusted anyone before. The day of her graduation was the day her life took an unexpected turn. As she walked across the stage to receive her degree, her heart swelled with pride and joy. But what came next was something she hadn't anticipated. After the ceremony, John took her aside and, with a gentle smile, dropped a bombshell that would change everything. "Sarah," he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. "I've been meaning to tell you something important. I've always kept this a secret, but it's time you knew the truth." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I am a tycoon. I have businesses in 5 major countries around the world. And I want to share everything with you." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. The man she had known as her helper was a wealthy and successful man. But the surprise didn't stop there. John took her by the hand and led her to a sprawling mansion, surrounded by luxury cars and the trappings of unimaginable wealth. As they toured the mansion, John shared his plans for their future, and Sarah couldn't help but marvel at the life he had built. Yet, even more than the wealth, it was John's sincerity and the way he had supported her through every step of her journey that moved her. That night, as they stood together, overlooking the city from his mansion, John looked into Sarah's eyes and asked the question she had never expected. "Sarah, will you marry me?" Overwhelmed with emotion, Sarah said yes, and what followed was a wedding like no other. The media called it the wedding of the century, with guests from all over the world attending. But to Sarah, it wasn't the extravagance that mattered. It was the love and support that had always been there, from the moments of hardship to the moments of triumph. John's proposal wasn't just a declaration of love, it was a promise to share a life of happiness, success, and support, a life they would build together, hand in hand. And Sarah, who had once struggled to survive, now stood beside him, ready to share in the life she had always dreamed of. As Sarah's life blossomed, the once challenging days seemed far behind her. Her hard work, determination, and the unexpected support of John had led her to a place of peace and prosperity. But her journey wasn't just about personal success, it was also about healing from the deep wounds caused by those who had wronged her. One day, as Sarah and John were enjoying their peaceful life in their mansion, Sarah's uncles and aunt appeared at her doorstep. The people who had taken everything from her, who had left her to suffer in the village, were now standing in front of her, humbling themselves and begging for forgiveness. "I am so sorry, Sarah," her uncle said, his voice filled with regret. "We were wrong to take everything from you. We were blinded by greed, and now we see how much you've overcome." Her aunt, too, apologized profusely, her voice trembling. "We didn't understand what you were going through, but now we know. Please, forgive us." The sight of them, broken and begging for forgiveness, brought a flood of memories to Sarah's mind. The years of hardship, the endless chores, the feeling of abandonment, all of it came rushing back. It was hard to erase the pain they had caused her, the way they had treated her like a burden. But despite their pleas, Sarah remained silent for a long moment. Her heart was heavy, but she knew deep down that forgiveness wasn't about excusing their actions, it was about finding peace for herself. Just as she was about to speak, John walked in, his calm presence soothing her. He turned to her gently and spoke the words that would help her find the clarity she needed. "To err is human, but to forgive is divine, Sarah. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget or condone what they did, it's about freeing yourself from the anger and the hurt." Sarah looked at John, and for the first time, she realized how true his words were. Holding on to anger would only hold her back from living the life she had worked so hard to build. With a deep breath, she turned back to her relatives. "I forgive you," she said softly, her voice steady. "But that doesn't mean you are welcome in my life the way you were before." Sarah's uncles and aunts nodded in understanding, tears of relief and gratitude in their eyes. They left, promising to change their ways and never take her kindness for granted again. Sarah didn't stop there. She also found a way to help her cousin, Paul, who had been job hunting for years without success. With a compassionate heart, she offered him a position in her growing advertising company. She wanted to help him rise above the struggles he had faced, just as she had risen above her own. With John by her side, Sarah built a life full of love, family, and success. They had children, and their home became a place of warmth and joy. Sarah had come so far from the girl who once cried in a village, and now she was surrounded by a family who truly cared for her. Her journey was one of resilience, forgiveness, and the power of love. Sarah had learned that, while life could be filled with hardships and betrayal, it was also filled with moments of grace, the opportunity to rise above, and the joy of creating a life built on kindness, forgiveness, and love.